Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. It was supposed to be a peaceful Thanksgiving weekend at a quiet farmhouse in Burlingame, Kansas. Instead, it turned into something out of a nightmare. On the evening of November 29, 2009, a strange call came into the sheriff's office. A neighbor had noticed an abandoned car and a man acting suspiciously, carrying something down the road before speeding away. When deputies arrived at the farmhouse, they weren't prepared for what they would find. The front door was open, and inside, the house was in chaos. Blood stained the floors, and someone's faint cries for help could be heard upstairs. Each step they took revealed something worse than the last. How did it all come to this? What could lead to such horror inside a family home? The truth is a story of control, anger, and the breaking point that changed everything. Stick around as we unravel the events of that fateful night and the years leading up to it. James Kaler appeared to have it all: a six-figure salary, a stable career, and a seemingly perfect family. His wife, Karen, embodied the quintessential stay-at-home mom, dedicating her life to raising their three children, Emily, Lauren, and Sean. To outsiders, the Kaler family represented everything a successful family was supposed to be: happy, thriving, and harmonious. But beneath the polished surface lay a web of sacrifices, compromises, and unspoken struggles that shaped their lives. Karen had dreams of her own once. She was pursuing an engineering degree when she met James, but their whirlwind romance led her to make a life-altering decision. In December 1985, the couple married, and Karen left college to support James's burgeoning career. They moved to Colorado, where James landed a promising job, and Karen embraced her role as a supportive wife, ready to build a future together. Their first major milestone arrived on April 8, 1991, when their eldest daughter, Emily, was born. Karen fully immersed herself in motherhood, while James's career flourished. But Karen's mother, Pat, observed that Karen often prioritized James's needs over her own, even in the demanding early days of parenthood. Pat worried that Karen was losing herself in the pursuit of their shared dream. By 1992, James's career prompted a move to Greenville, Texas, and in May 1993, Lauren was born. Emily and Lauren both thrived in their own ways. Emily was academically driven and musically gifted, playing drums and singing, while Lauren found her stride in sports and music, mastering the bass guitar. Life in Texas seemed idyllic, but cracks began to show. One of the first major tensions arose over expanding their family. Karen was content with 2 children, but James wanted a third. They eventually reached a compromise, drafting a formal agreement. Karen agreed to have 1 more child if James consented to a vasectomy afterward. Sean was born in March 1999, fulfilling their agreement. True to his word, James underwent the procedure, marking the end of their growing family. As James's career climbed higher, the Kalers relocated to Texas, near Dallas. Karen adapted once again, finding her place in the local community. She became the president of a mom's group, built friendships, and ensured her children were active and engaged. Emily continued to excel academically and musically. Lauren thrived in band and sports, and Sean showed promise as a baseball star. On the outside, their life looked like a dream. But James's relentless pursuit of perfection began to take its toll. He set impossibly high standards for everyone, especially his family. Lauren often bore the brunt of his criticism for not achieving straight A's like Emily. James's rigidity extended to his professional life, where colleagues found him arrogant and dismissive, especially toward women in leadership roles. His obsession with appearances and control alienated those around him. Even at home, James's need for control was evident. Despite earning $180,000 a year, he tightly managed the family's finances. Karen received a strict weekly allowance and was required to keep every receipt from her shopping trips. James's frugality was well known. He borrowed tools instead of buying them and even relied on co-workers to pay for his entertainment at strip clubs. Every evening at 8:30 p.m., Karen was expected to be in bed for what James deemed their routine. Any deviation from this expectation was met with anger or worse. Friends noticed how Karen whispered during late phone calls, apologizing and rushing to end conversations to avoid James's wrath. Even illness didn't exempt her from these demands. Defiance was risky, as James's anger could escalate to physical violence. For Karen, compliance often felt like the only safe choice. It hadn't always been this way. Early in their relationship, James's control was less overt, but it steadily grew more suffocating over the years. At one point, he suggested bringing another woman into their relationship, claiming it was to spice things up. Karen was deeply uncomfortable with the idea but struggled to say no. Desperate for an outlet and some independence, Karen secretly joined a gym. Fitness had always been a passion, and the gym became her sanctuary. James refused to pay for a membership, so Karen baked cakes and took odd jobs to afford it. By January 2006, she had saved enough to join Powerhouse Gym, where she quickly became a regular. Her dedication paid off. She eventually secured a part-time job as a personal trainer. James surprisingly allowed it with one condition. She had to be home before the kids returned from school. Karen excelled in her role and made new friends, but her gym community also became an outlet for venting about her crumbling marriage. At the gym, Karen opened up about the constant arguments, James's anger, and the growing tension at home. The fights often turned physical, leaving Karen with bruises that she tried to hide. Her unhappiness was no secret to those around her. It was at this point that Karen met Sonny, a fellow trainer who was calm, understanding, and a stark contrast to James. Sonny became Karen's confidant, and over time, their bond deepened into a romantic relationship. Speculation surrounded how Karen and Sonny's relationship began. Some believe James's earlier suggestion of involving a third person had set the stage, while others thought the affair had started organically, without James's knowledge. Regardless, their relationship eventually became public, evolving into a threesome. James even encouraged the connection, sending Sonny flirty messages, buying gifts for both women, and supporting their weekend getaways. Yet he later denied any role in fostering the relationship, framing Karen as the one destroying their marriage. In 2008, James found a way to reassert control. He accepted a higher-paying job in Columbia, Missouri, forcing Karen to leave her life and Sonny behind. Karen was heartbroken. Her kids were deeply involved in their activities, and she had built strong community ties in Weatherford. But as always, James's decisions overruled hers. He moved ahead, leaving Karen to wrap up their life in Texas. Unbeknownst to him, Karen and Sonny decided to maintain their relationship long distance. When Karen and the kids joined James in Missouri, he believed their marriage had been fixed. He even allowed Karen to enroll at the University of Missouri and pursue a health sciences degree while continuing her work as a fitness instructor. But Karen, having tasted freedom with Sonny, wasn't content to return to her old life. She craved independence, and James's obsessive need for control only intensified. He began monitoring her every move, emails, phone calls, and even her whereabouts. The tension reached a breaking point on New Year's Eve 2008 during a party back in Weatherford. Neither James nor Karen expected Sonny to attend, but there she was. Karen's joy at seeing Sonny was unmistakable. They laughed, hugged, and shared drinks in a way that made it clear their bond was far from over. To James, it was a public humiliation, a direct challenge to his authority. His anger boiled over as he realized his grip on Karen was slipping, and the illusion of his perfect family was unraveling before his eyes. James, unable to contain his anger, confronted Karen in front of everyone, shouting accusations of infidelity. Karen, refusing to back down, kissed Sonny in full view of the guests. The spectacle shocked the room, and the host, uncomfortable with the escalating drama, asked them to leave. The fight spilled out onto the front lawn, where James's anger turned physical. He shoved Karen, causing her to fall and hit her head on the ground. By the next morning, the fallout was undeniable. Karen, reflecting on the chaos, began questioning the way she had been challenging James. She told Sonny they needed to take a break, but Sonny adamantly disagreed, pointing out that the real issue was James's abusive behavior. Concerned for Karen's safety, Sonny encouraged her to make a change. In January 2009, Karen finally took a stand and filed for divorce. Though she continued living in the house, she moved into a separate bedroom and maintained her long-distance relationship with Sonny. James, however, refused to let go. He obsessively monitored Karen's emails, tracked her movements, and even intercepted greeting cards from Sonny. Each time Karen made plans with Sonny, James would find a way to interfere, his jealousy pushing him further into irrational behavior. At work, James's colleagues began noticing his unraveling. He would carry around a photo album of his family, showing it off to anyone who would listen and lamenting, "Why doesn't Karen want this perfect family?" His erratic behavior made everyone uncomfortable, but James was too consumed by his obsession to notice. In March 2009, tensions reached a breaking point. After a city council meeting where James gave a speech, he and Karen got into another heated argument. This time, James's anger turned violent. He physically blocked Karen from leaving, cornering her against a cabinet, and assaulted her. Karen called the police, and James was arrested for third-degree domestic assault. In her police statement, Karen detailed James's increasingly violent and controlling behavior, while he dismissed the incident as a misunderstanding, claiming he was only trying to give her a hug. The bruises on Karen's body told a different story. Karen moved out shortly after, taking the kids with her. She withdrew $50,000 from their joint account and rented a home on the other side of Columbia, signaling her determination to break free from James's grip. For James, the arrest was catastrophic. As a public figure, his actions made headlines, and his colleagues became increasingly vocal about his bizarre behavior. Unable to salvage his reputation, James was forced to resign under the guise of family issues. In reality, his firing was inevitable. With his career in shambles and his family gone, James retreated to his parents' farm in Kansas, hoping hard work would bring clarity. Instead, the isolation only deepened his obsession. He fixated on Karen, unable to understand why she had left him. In his mind, he had been the perfect provider and husband. He refused to acknowledge that his controlling and abusive behavior had driven her away. James's obsession soon turned toxic. He began stalking Karen, reading her texts, emails, and even private cards from Sonny. He hurled homophobic slurs at both women, despite having encouraged Karen's relationship with Sonny in the past when it suited him. His anger only escalated when his daughters started distancing themselves from him. Emily, his eldest, defied James by choosing a college he didn't approve of, which he saw as a personal betrayal. When one of his daughters posted on Facebook about her bisexuality, James lashed out, blaming Karen for corrupting their children. Desperate to regain control, James built an extensive case against Karen, compiling over 3,500 pages of so-called evidence for his divorce attorney. The files included screenshots of Karen's private messages, detailed notes on her visits to Sonny, and baseless claims that the women had acted inappropriately in front of the kids. Despite his efforts, the accusations were never substantiated, and his fixation only further isolated him from the life he once controlled so tightly. James's behavior had grown increasingly erratic and dangerous. He confided in friends about wanting to harm Sonny, though no one took him seriously. Despite his rage toward Karen and Sonny, he was engaging in multiple affairs, further highlighting his instability and self-contradiction. Amid this chaos, James seemed to maintain one stable relationship, his bond with his son, Sean. Unlike his estranged relationships with Karen and his daughters, James made an effort to stay connected with Sean. They spent time hunting and fishing together, and James clung to this relationship as the last thread of his crumbling family life. Sean represented a glimmer of hope for James, a connection that hadn't yet been severed. By Thanksgiving 2009, tensions were high. Karen, trying to hold on to what remained of her family, planned a visit to her grandmother Dorothy's farmhouse in Burlingame, Kansas, with her children and Sonny. On the day after Thanksgiving, Karen went to pick up Sean from James's house to join the family gathering. Dorothy, at 89 years old, lived in a small, quiet town of fewer than 1,000 residents. The visit was meant to be a peaceful holiday reunion, but it would end in unimaginable horror. On the evening of November 29, 2009, a neighbor in Burlingame reported a suspicious vehicle speeding through the area. They watched as the driver, a man, parked, exited the truck, and walked down the road carrying a large object. Moments later, he returned, placed the object in the truck's back seat, and sped off. Concerned, the neighbors called the sheriff's office, suspecting a robbery. What followed was far darker than anyone could have anticipated. When deputies arrived at Dorothy's home to investigate, they were met with a scene of devastation. Dorothy was found in the kitchen, bleeding heavily from multiple gunshot wounds. Though alive, she was barely clinging to life. In the dining room lay Karen, shot twice and already deceased. In the lounge, 18-year-old Emily was discovered behind the couch, also shot twice. The second shot had paralyzed her instantly, and she had died on the scene. A faint voice from upstairs alerted deputies to another victim. 16-year-old Lauren was alive but gravely injured. She had been shot multiple times and was struggling to hold on. As paramedics worked to stabilize her, Lauren whispered a chilling revelation. "James, my dad." Her injuries were too severe, and despite efforts to save her, Lauren succumbed shortly after. Dorothy, too, passed away, leaving Sean as the only survivor of the massacre. Sean later recounted the events of that horrific night. He and Karen had been sitting together, cleaning old coins when James burst through the back door with a rifle. Without hesitation, he opened fire, killing Karen first. Sean's desperate attempt to call for help that night was interrupted by the sound of more gunshots echoing through the house. Overcome with terror, he knew he had to escape. He fled through the chaos, sprinting to a neighbor's house to find safety. Authorities quickly issued a search warrant for James, and it wasn't long before they located his car, abandoned in a remote area where it seemed eerily out of place. Inside the vehicle, officers discovered an unsettling scene. There was a stash of ammunition, unopened bottles of anxiety medication, and a backpack filled with essentials like soap, toilet paper, and canned food. It was clear James had been preparing for something, but James himself was nowhere to be found. Hours later, he was spotted wandering along a desolate road, looking disheveled and lost. When the officers approached, he didn't resist. Instead, he muttered, "I'm the guy you're looking for," and surrendered without incident. James's defense argued that his deteriorating mental health, including depression and personality disorders, had pushed him to the breaking point. They claimed he had snapped and was not in control of his actions. The prosecution, however, presented a different narrative, one of premeditation and calculated intent. Their key evidence included testimony from James's psychiatrist, who confirmed that while James did suffer from mental health issues, he retained the ability to plan his actions. The fact that he had spared Sean's life underscored the intentional nature of his crimes. 2 years later, in 2011, the trial began. Sean, now 12 years old, displayed extraordinary courage as he took the stand to recount the harrowing events of that night. With heartbreaking clarity, he described how his father had burst into the home and opened fire, killing his mother and sisters. His testimony painted a vivid picture of calculated violence, leaving no doubt about James's intent. Sonny also testified, sharing details about Karen's abusive relationship with James. She explained how James's demeanor had shifted drastically after Karen decided to leave him, transforming from indifferent to hostile. Though Sonny's testimony relied on her memories and Karen's accounts, it offered valuable insight into the toxic dynamics leading up to the tragedy. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. James was guilty of capital murder. His insanity defense was rejected, and he faced the ultimate penalty, death. As the sentence was read, James remained emotionless. He even requested to leave the courtroom during the victim impact statements but was ordered to stay. Sean's statement during the sentencing was perhaps the most poignant moment of the trial. With remarkable strength, he said, "I do not want my dad to receive the death penalty because it would be hard on my grandparents. I do not want my whole family gone." Despite everything James had done, Sean still saw him as a father and struggled with the prospect of losing him too. James, however, showed no remorse. After his sentencing, he began writing letters, not to apologize but to justify his actions. He claimed he had freed Sean from what he described as a toxic environment, revealing his lack of accountability and twisted perception of his crimes. James's legal team quickly filed an appeal, arguing that the jury was biased and that his mental health hadn't been properly considered. The Kansas Supreme Court disagreed, affirming that James's mental health had been evaluated during sentencing but did not excuse his actions. His appeal was denied, leaving James on death row, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of his choices. For Sean, life after the tragedy was a testament to resilience. Despite enduring unimaginable loss and trauma, he graduated from high school and built a life for himself in Kansas. His journey stands as a beacon of strength and hope, a reminder that even in the face of profound darkness, it is possible to rise above and find a path forward. James's crimes left a permanent scar, but Sean's perseverance is a powerful testament to human endurance. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.